I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Go ahead and start the meeting. I'd consider a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Sean.
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Then we've got our claims and payroll reports. Those are in your share drive. And as far as reports, just one I'd like to point out regarding the coronavirus recovery fund. We received a total of $3,315,000, 384 in grant funds in 2020 and then into 2021. And those, they've notified us that that program has ended and overall had paid out $207.5 million to cities and counties. It's a big number, and I know that it certainly helped out our county in dealing with the coronavirus. I just wanted to point that out. Moving on to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank
Second.
you. Thank you. Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes, I would point out, in item C2, there was a typographical error on the 2021 Chevy half-ton. That's actually a 2012. And Sean, you had corrected that, correct?
I did not get it corrected on the agenda.
Do we need to do,
Would,
it's just a Scrivener's error.
it is a Scrivener's error.
And we have opportunity for public comment for items not on the agenda. Is there anyone that would wish to address the board? Seeing nobody and hearing none, move on to the commissioner report. Do any commissioners have anything they would like to say this morning?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
yes, I am meeting this Thursday at 10 o'clock. I scheduled a meeting with Helms and Associates with the Lincoln County Lincoln County Airport. And they'll be coming down and sharing some information with me, kind of getting me caught up on that. And Commissioner Poppins as well was notified of it and so on. So we'll be meeting with them and kind of going from there, and as a result of the possibility of the committee that will be forming later on to look at the airport and some of our options.
Awesome. Commissioner Schmidt, you look like you want to say something.
Well, Madam Chair, next week, the South Dakota Association of Counties are having their spring workshop, at which time they will be discussing the results of the legislative agenda that is going on in Pierre. They will also be discussing timely topics pertaining to county government. There's going to be a workshop on rural housing. That should be very interesting.
All right. Joel, do you have anything?
I had an opportunity to meet with Dr. Snell, our county coroner, and went through his budget and program, and he had some very interesting, eye-opening report to make about how the county coroner functions in a growing county like ours. And we also had an opportunity to discuss about ways to cut costs in the county coroner's office without cutting any essential job functions that they perform, which may just require some policy changes with some of our hospitals, or one in particular. And so Commissioner Gibbon and I talked about that, and we may be able to work with some of our community partners to be able to slightly reduce expenses to the county just based upon some changes in policies with some of our community partners, one of the hospitals. So hopefully we can work through that and save taxpayers some money.
All right, sounds good. Is Mike on the phone? Commissioner Poppins, did you have anything you wanted to add today?
No, I'm going to refrain. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, my computer says it's 8:35. Oh, now the clock on the wall does as well. So we'll go ahead with our public hearing to consider an application for retail on-off sale wine and cider license from the Good Earth Farm LLC at Kroger's Addition. Sean, were you gonna tee that up, or?
Yeah, I believe the applicant is here as well,
Okay.
if you would like. Okay.
Would the applicant come on up, please? You just state your name and address and pull that microphone down. And if you're more comfortable, I'm fine with you taking your mask off
That's
to
good.
talk.
Nancy Kirstein, I'm at 28318 466th Avenue in Lenox, and I'm applying for a wine license. I thought I did this the last time, but it was just the beer, so we're here again. And hopefully we're gonna it right this time.
I thought you had been here.
Yeah.
Well, okay. All right. Anybody have any questions? All right. Is there anybody here to speak in favor of the application? Besides the applicant? All right. Anybody here to speak against? If not, I would consider a motion.
I'll move to, Madam Chair, I'll move that the county commission approve the application for retail on-off sale wine and cider license from the Good Earth Farm.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. I have a first and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Moving on to appointment of the District 2 representative on the Lincoln County Planning Board. Commissioner Gibbon, you were going to address that?
Madam Chair, if I could, just for a
Oh,
moment.
sure.
Just for public information, part of the responsibilities that each commissioner has is to select from their particular district a representative from the, for the planning board, planning and zoning board. And sometimes that is relatively easy, and sometimes that is relatively difficult. Commissioner Gibbons is going to report, but I wanted to share, because that is quite a task to ask of a private citizen to devote that much time. Currently, my District 5 in Sioux Falls has a vacancy. And we did have a representative, Mr. Gary Pashby, who was an attorney, who worked very hard on that. And I just wanted to share that it is difficult, because I think I've talked to 3 people, and none of them want to participate. They have heard stories, or they look at the amount of time involved. So it's not easy, but you have to vet those individuals, what a commissioner thinks would be the best individual that serve on a commission, what they can bring to that planning and zoning board from experience or whatever is sometimes a challenge. Thank you, Commissioner Gibbon, for letting me make that comment, but it's your show, Jim.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'd like to say, first of all, I'd like to thank the 4 people that did inquire and wanted to serve. It's very nice that we have some opportunities that people want to serve. As Commissioner Schmidt said, that he's having trouble finding someone. Besides those 4 that made inquiries that I visited with, we had 4 other people that called me and visited me about the position that decided not to make a formal application. It's been interesting. We talked about a variety of subjects when I sat down with all 4 people. I mean, water and drainage and tiling right now is a big issue in District 2. It really is. The transfer of housing eligibilities was another subject that was brought up frequently in visiting with applicants. the confined animal feed operations, particularly setbacks, the rules and regulations with that right now. District 2 is a large area, as you know, with 13 townships and numerous small communities and cities. The livestock people, of course, are concerned about them being able to expand, and the fact that, are we going to get run out of the county here pretty soon? You know, these are real issues. One of the things, too, brought up again was wind energy. I know we voted as a county as that. I respect that vote. Again, there are those that question that. And of course, there's other issues as well that I visited with applicants about, and that dealt with the possibility where the state will be in regard to the growing now of not only hemp, but possibility of marijuana. And so these are all issues that our planning and zoning will have to deal with. And we need some good guidance there. You know, it would be nice that one thing fits all, but at the same time, we have to look at what each individual case is as well. And so I respect that, the Planning and Zoning Committee for that. But anyway, I'd like to thank all those four that I was able to sit down with. I liked the process. All had very good ideas on some things, and so on and so forth. But my choice for the position will be Mark Johnson, and I'd like to make that as a motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Gibbon. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, Sean, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Go on, Julia, do you want to come up? We're on item 4,
Good morning.
3.
or excuse me, 3. My bad. Good morning.
The first is to approve the hire for Dominic Havard as a full-time correctional officer for the sheriff's office at $19.99 per hour, effective the 15th of March.
Thank
So
you.
moved, Madam Chair, on the recommendation of the new hire for the
Thank
sheriff's
you.
office.
Thank you. I have a first and a second. Any discussion? Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes.
And next is to approve the part-time hire of Terry Anderson as a part-time deputy sheriff for the sheriff's office at $24.88 per hour, effective the 1st of March.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes.
And then lastly is to accept the resignation of Rhonda Hedrick, Administrative Assistant for the State's Attorney's Office, effective the 15th of March.
Is there a motion?
Also move. Madam
Second.
Chair.
Thank you. Any discussion? Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Sadly, yes.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 6, reclassification in the state's attorney's office. Julie, were you going to handle that, or State's Attorney Woolman, were you going to do that? Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for your acceptance, maybe not thank you for your acceptance of Ms. Hedrick's resignation this morning. She's been with the county for 20 years as of Friday, and that is her last day. So very, very sad to see her go. She's given a lot of service to the county, and I'm still in the middle of the grieving process, so I'll try and keep it together here. But moving on to private practice up in Sioux Falls, so we wish her well with that. As we accepted that resignation, Julia and myself looked a little bit at the structure of the office and some needs as we move it forward. We were just in front of the Courthouse Advisory Committee this past week, talking about the unprecedented growth that we've seen over the last 10, 20 years, and the growth within my office in addressing the needs of our accompanying growing crime rate as well. So one of the things that we looked at was reclassifying the administrative assistant position and worked with Julia on what that may look like. I believe that we've submitted that in your packet for review. And essentially making that a position underneath both the civil deputy and myself to deal with office management, budget management, and things of that nature. Again, that's spelled out in your packet. And then the other position was the office manager position. Again, actually, that was the budgetary. Yeah, the budget and day-to-day operations. And again, so a touch of personnel management in there as well. So it's spelled out in your packet. I think I requested that the last paragraph in that packet contain the bold print language that this is at no extra cost or no additional supplement to the state's attorney's office budget. Based upon the shifting and the retirement, or the resignation of Ms. Hedrick and the available budget that we have, that will not cost any additional funds. So any questions about that?
Because currently, are you doing most of the, I'll call it bookwork, administrative type of duties yourself?
Yes, with the guidance of Jessica Summervold, who had come up from the auditor's office a number of years ago. So she provides that support to me, but yes, involved in the day-to-day management of the budget.
Does anybody have any questions? Are you asking for approval today?
Yes.
Yep.
So what we'd like to do, or what Tom would like to do, is reclassify the position, one paralegal to office manager, and then one victim witness assistant position to the senior paralegal position. And again, like he said, there won't be any cost per se. However, 2 people in his department will move up into those roles. They'll both be at a 109. And then I think this structure here that they've took a lot of time and energy to put forward to you is a good framework of what will help them in the future then for their growth.
Looks good.
So can we handle these with one motion, or should we do 2 separate?
Probably 2 separate.
That's what I was thinking. So we would be creating an office manager position.
Correct.
So I would consider a motion to create an office manager position in the state's attorney's office.
So moved on that, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I just want to be abundantly clear that there's no positions being created per se. I don't want there to be a perception that you're adding staff at this point.
It's a reclassification.
It's a reclassification.
Rearranging.
It's a reclassification of a paralegal
Correct.
position, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And with that clarification, is that consistent with the motions that are made?
Yes.
Yeah, that doesn't change my second.
No.
It's my understanding, it's reclass.
Thank you. Okay, Sean, will you go ahead and call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. And then, can you explain a little more detail the transition to having a lead paralegal? How that'll work?
Yes, and in essence, that's what Ms. Hedrick was doing in her position, and that position carries with it additional responsibilities of case assignments and just the overall management of the felony caseload between the attorneys and paralegals. So the duties are greater, and of course, in recognizing that, wanted to reclassify that position.
All right. You've heard the request. Is there a motion?
I'll move to reclassify the position to the lead paralegal.
Thank you.
I'll second it, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any discussion? If not, Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you for your consideration this morning, Commissioner Aaron's and Commissioner Schmidt. I believe that Judge Howman had supplemented her, or wanted to supplement her record as it related to the courthouse committee meeting. And of course, those numbers show an increase, and our numbers are up. I think the overall circuit numbers are up 25%, and we are up knocking on 60% on additional felonies already this year. So we just keep getting busier, and thank you for your consideration this morning.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. And she, I did reach back out to her and told her that she'd be on the agenda for the next meeting.
Tom, at some point in time, could you give the commission, a caseload on how many cases your staff is handling and how that has increased over a period of time in lieu of what Judge Howman had to say?
Yes, absolutely. And Mr. Golden, when we received that email, Mr. Golden lost a little sleep this weekend as we crunched those numbers and went through our felony numbers. We are exceptionally busy and are, again, seeing an uptick even this year. So sort of post-COVID, as we work out of that, I think our numbers were maybe down just a touch last year, but we've got a little bit of a backlash that's coming, and working with Julia as well in assessing what everybody's working on and what their caseloads are.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sherry, you want to come up? We're on item 7.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So we started receiving the MJ Electric payments, and we had discussions about what we were going to do with the money. It was said to give it to 4-H, but I need to know, do you mean 4-H or do you mean the 4-H leaders? Are we setting up a fund for the building? What do we want to do?
You talked to the state about that?
I did talk to the state, and they said depending on which way we go, if we wanted to go to the leaders, we would set up an agency fund so that the money would transfer to them. If we want to set it to assign it just for the building, then we would set up an assigned fund under the general fund that would track the payments that we received over the time.
Well, I personally, I think setting up a separate fund to track those monies so they don't just go into the general fund is a good idea, so that they get put back towards what they were intended for.
Right, but so what we want to do then, and if we want it to go to the building but not the leaders, then we want to set up an assigned fund under the general fund that will say assigned fund, and it will track that money. It'll keep accruing it. If we set up a fund, then an agency fund is basically a holding account to send it to another agency. I don't know if we necessarily want to do that.
Right, so if you set up a fund, a line item, can you have sub-line items under that, say one for buildings and one for leadership, and split those out?
We probably can.
Personally, I would like to see we set up a fund for the building fund, because that's the most eminent thing that they're working on. and
But it's
all of-
not a capital project yet. So we have to wait till it's a capital project to do
What
that,
defines a capital project?
having the funding for it. No, I mean, not having the funding for it, but saying that the project's there. Right now, it's just, we know that it's coming, but it hasn't been set. When we set this money in the assigned line item, then when we do come to the realization for the capital project, do the funding for it by bond or however we're gonna fund it, then we would move this as seed money to that capital project. But the state suggested setting it up as an assigned balance. That number will, over the years, it can increase. It's gonna be assigned for the 4-H buildings. And he's gonna walk me through when you decide which way we wanna do it on how to set it up. But it will be set up, the money will not be able to be used for anything else. And we'll have the tracking method to see what was put in there.
Any other questions?
Well,
The amount of money, what are we talking about?
Well, right now, So we're getting $600 from MJ Electric a month. Then my next question was gonna be, anytime they rent the building, is that the same thing? We're going to dump it into that to build onto the building, or is it gonna be goods and service? I just need clarification on what we're doing with, because we've got a rental that I'm getting ready to deposit for the building for March 20th for $410.
I don't know what everybody else's thoughts are, but I guess to me as a tracking mechanism to see what kind of revenue that's generating, that would be a good way to do that, to put it into the, to have any rents or anything from that facility to go into that fund. That would make sense to me. Anybody else?
Well, as long as you could track the money, I think that's probably the most critical thing. But you know, I know, I get, Mr. Golden isn't here to shake his head at me again, but so I look at all the rentals that we have, whether we're getting from MJ Electric or they're storing poles, or we're getting land that, for that, next to the T land where they want to hold some machinery. I don't understand why we just don't take and dedicate it, that rent, to a most vital project is 4-H buildings. I mean, we spent a goodly amount to acquire the land, and they got a wonderful facility, but now they're really trying to put together an animal complex that will serve the kids. So this is unintended income that we didn't count on, so why not dedicate it to some worthwhile purpose? So that's my speech anyway. I probably
Sure.
fall on deaf ears, but I don't care.
Sherry, do we have a system for tracking all other rental income? And if so, what is that system?
We do have line items, it like rent for egg buildings, and it's on the, if I had the forms up here with me, but we do have, under the general fund, separate line items under miscellaneous that says rent / whatever it is.
But in this instance, what we're talking about doing is doing something slightly different though, right?
Well, not really. What we're going to do is we're going to put rental for each building. And then at the end of the year, that money that's in that account will get put into the assigned general fund for the 4-H building only.
So with the rental income that's derived from other rents, that goes into the general fund
Yep.
of the county.
Yep.
But what this will do is this will require all of those monies to go into the 4-H
Right,
line
it-
item at
Yep,
the
it will
end
go
of the
into an
year.
assigned fund for 4-H
Okay.
buildings.
All right. So all rental income until this commission changes it, will go to the 4-H.
For this or for,
All
All
rental
rental.
income for the building out there
yes,
will go to the 4-H.
yep, and that's what I was wanting you to do.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the creation of a fund for the 4-H rental receipts.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
I'll second it, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yep.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Moving on to item 8, Sheriff Swenson, is that yours?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, we have the State of South Dakota 911 Board allotted all the PSAPs in the state, a little over $116,000. It's a PSAP, not a PSAF. There's a typo in the agenda there. It stands for Public Safety Answering Point. So we put in for a project that was approved. I don't know where this is at. Anyway, it's a four-state, it increases our dispatch center from a three-seat dispatch center to a 4-seat dispatch center. So it's a complete revamp of the furniture in that office. The bid that was qualified through the state bid process was through Russ Bassett. in the amount of $71,364.56. The 911 board approved that to fund it 100%. So I'm asking for approval to move forward with this project.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. Sean?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
yes,
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes.
And then the second item is, I've submitted a contract from the city of T for police dispatch that I'm asking for motion for the chair to sign that agreement.
Thank you.
So moved, Madam Chair, on his request.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? And Sheriff Swenson, we were not, prior to this, we had not been receiving any monies for dispatch services.
Correct. So we've got T, just put T, Canton, Worthing have all signed, and Lennox should be in this week.
All right. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
yes,
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have our highway superintendent to address items 10 and 11 on the agenda.
First item I have for you this morning is approval and authorize the chair to execute the amendment to 2019 ER Event A agreement. Basically what this amendment does, this one and the next one, is changing funding limits in the agreement.
Is that just rearranging, Terry, when they say that there's no added monies, it's just, what, you redirect or redefine?
Basically what they're doing is they're amending the funding limits to mirror what the actual costs were for a project.
Okay. So moved on that, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, Sean, will you call the roll?
Aaron seconded that. Yep. Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
yes,
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes.
And the next one is authorizing, approve and authorize the chair to execute the amendment for 2019 ER Event B agreement. Basically, the same thing. They're changing the funding agreement, or the funding limits on this one as well.
So moved.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? If not, Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
yes,
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes.
All right, that's all I got. Hey, I do have one more thing. It's just an FYI. A week or so ago, the state met on their grant awards. We lost out on the Lake Alvin Bridge for a big grant by 2 places. And we ended up we were awarded a preservation grant on another structure down south. So it's good news.
All right.
All right?
Okay.
Thank you. Next, we have first reading for an ordinance of Lincoln County, amending the official zoning map of Lincoln County by changing the zoning of the property legally described as Lot 4 of Tract 1 of Superior Addition in the southeast quarter of Section 18, Township 97 North, Range 50 West of the 5th Principal Meridian, Lincoln County, South Dakota, from the C Commercial Zoning District to the I-1 Light Industrial Zoning District. The location is 28778 Superior Place, Beersford. The Planning Commission recommended approval 5 to 0 with 1 abstaining. Is Toby you're gonna come up, Toby? Thank you.
Good morning, Toby Brown with County Planning. This first item before you General vicinity of this is at the Fairview exit, approximately the northeast quadrant along Interstate 29. Subject property was part of a rezone of 63 acres in 2004, a change of zone from A1 agricultural to C commercial. Subsequent to that, the 11.25 acres of the subject property received a conditional use permit for light manufacturing. Building permit was subsequently issued in 2010 and in 2014. So approximately on site right now is a 98,200 square foot light manufacturing facility. The owner of the property approached staff, discussed expanding the operation additionally, and staff identified that the subject property would be a non-conforming use because of the current zoning. Comprehensive plan does identify this property as a rural commercial industrial property. And so with the change of zone to I-1 light industrial, the subject expansion would be a conforming use. It would also be in conformance with the comprehensive plan and also in conformance with the surrounding properties. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for staff on this item.
How are they gonna change it? If they're going, Toby, are they going to add more in steel production, or are they gonna change their method of what they currently are doing?
My initial understanding is that primarily just additional warehousing for steel,
Oh,
so that they can have material on hand for their customers.
okay.
Where are they gonna put the additional?
So the next item on the agenda is this piece of property here as well. They own this, and so the proposal would be to combine these parcels and then expand across over here.
Thank you.
Commissioner Schmidt, to answer your question, I watched went back and watched the planning and zoning hearing here to look at this. And they did specifically state in the hearing that they want to expand their operations and their business, and they need to do this in order to move forward.
So this is the first reading. We're not asking for any action today, correct?
They rolled steel, I think they.
Yes, you've scheduled the second reading for March 23rd.
Okay, and that's already scheduled?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Move on to item 13. It's a first reading for an ordinance of Lincoln County amending the official zoning map of Lincoln County by changing the zoning of the property legally described as Lot 5 of Tract 1 of Superior Addition in the southeast quarter of Section 18, Township 97 North, Range 50 West of the 5th Principal Meridian, Lincoln County, South Dakota, from the C Commercial Zoning District to the I-1 Light Industrial Zoning District. The location is the northwest corner of intersection 288th Street and 471st Avenue, Beersford. Planning Commission recommended approval 5-0 with 1 abstention.
Okay, same vicinity. This is in the northeast quadrant of the Fairview X along Interstate 29. This parcel, again, was part of a 63-acre change of zone from A1 agricultural to I1 in 2000, or to commercial in 2004. This property is approximately 18.2 acres in size. Again, the property is currently vacant right now. It is owned by Long Creek Steel. The concept is that they would combine these two parcels, and then there would be an expansion to the existing complex across the property line into this subject property. And again, this property was previously approved with a subdivision called Superior Addition, so all of the subdivision requirements have been met for the subject property. Again, this property is identified on the comprehensive plan as a rural commercial industrial area, so the proposed application would be in compliance or with the comprehensive plan as well as the zoning. And again, as Commissioner Aaron's pointed out, that there is a plan for expansion into the subject property. This would make that expansion a conforming use with the Lincoln County zoning ordinance. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for staff on this application.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? If not, we'll move on to item 14, which is a first reading for an ordinance of Lincoln County, amending the text of Article 12, Section 12.09, subsection F, concentrated animal feeding operations and minimum separation distances of the 2009 revised zoning ordinance of Lincoln County, South Dakota. The Planning Commission recommended approval 5-0 with 1 abstention.
Okay, good morning again. So this particular item, if you recall, was referred to the Planning Commission for recommendation. A subgroup of the Board of Commissioners worked to identify some changes or some amendments to Section 1219F of the zoning ordinance. Those changes were again referred to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission did conduct a public hearing. At that public hearing, the Planning Commission did amend the ordinance that was referred to them. Specifically, within the setback chart, the version that was sent to them for recommendation would have increased the Class C setback to approximately 1,900 feet. The Planning Commission amended that to keep it the same, so at 1,320 feet. And so that was the only change that was made to it. There was a public hearing for this proposed amendment at the Planning Commission. And as you recall, staff was directed to send direct communication to landowners who had concentrated animal feeding operations permitted in Lincoln County, as well as some agricultural organizations. So there was quite a bit of attendance at that public hearing. If I recall, there wasn't really anyone in favor of the proposed amendment, but the Planning Commission did recommend approval of the amendment, or approval of the ordinance as amended, with keeping the Class C setback at 1,320 feet. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for staff at this time.
So Toby and I watched the hearing, but just so the public knows here and the rest of the commission who may not have, essentially the ordinance as amended maintains the status quo. Is that right?
For setbacks,
For
correct.
setbacks, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Toby, why again was the Class C cut back to 1320 versus 1900?
80, yeah.
Pardon?
1980. There was a kind of a discussion about, over the years we've discussed there should be a difference between a Class C and a Class D setback for dwellings. And one of the Planning Commission members started a discussion of why do we increase the Class C, why not decrease the Class D? So there was some discussion about actually decreasing the Class D. And then after that discussion, it was really settled that they would just decide, let's not make any changes to the setbacks.
Toby, just for the public, since maybe watching, what are the number of animal units that are in A, B, C, and D?
I could tell you the Class C is $24.99.
And Class
Up
B?
to Class D.
Our Class B as in boy.
Class B, not looking at it and depending on the species of it and things like that, it would vary.
So we went from 1,900 feet down to 1,300 feet, right?
No,
For
it's
Class C.
currently 1320.
Yeah.
The version that you sent down to them for referral or for recommendation
But
would have
was there
increased it.
recommended to go to 1,900 feet?
No, I didn't have any recommendation on this.
Toby, before, when I was sitting on the planning and zoning, wasn't there language in here about reverse setbacks? Has that been taken out, or is that in another part of the ordinance?
No, so this goes back to the ad hoc committee that
Okay.
had a recommendation. So there's actually been 3 versions of this amendment that's been
Okay.
brought forward. to
It
you.
looks different than
Correct.
what I remember,
This was,
so,
I'll call this version 3.
thank you.
Was property line discussed, Toby, at length? I didn't watch the proceedings, but I know we've talked about that before. You know, going from it's a dwelling to the assignment versus going from the person's property line to where they can put a unit in. Was that discussed a lot?
There was some communication that was submitted to our office, and then also some communication at the public hearing that they'd previously discussed about, and again, this goes back to the ad hoc committee, about changing the setback from property line to property line. But in that subgroup of the county commissioners that we worked with, that was not part of the discussion or part of the draft that was forwarded.
Thank you.
I watched Toby online that meeting that evening too, and there was interesting discussion. I guess, you know, odor is one of the things that keeps being brought up. At one time, wasn't there an odor ordinance or something being discussed, or the possibility of it?
So as proposed in this amendment, we would be removing the SDFOT requirement. And the SDFOT requirement is what I'll call is an estimation tool out of South Dakota State University, which, and whenever we have, per this ordinance, whenever we have an application that's a CAFO, the applicant is required to submit the SDFOT analysis. And the SDFOT analysis is an estimation of odor annoyance. And so they've established, or the county's established, that a 97% odor annoyance threshold. And then once that threshold really corresponds to a setback. So the estimation part of it tells us how much odor annoyance there's going to be, but essentially how staff utilizes it or how the tool utilizes it is then we determine if that needs to then increase the setback. And since we've had this ordinance in place since 2018, it has not resulted in an increased setback over the standard setback that we have in the ordinance. And so, as we've talked about in the past, is that there are some deficiencies in the tool, mainly that we all know about, that it doesn't take into account temperature, it doesn't take into account topography. The secondary thing that staff has realized over the years is that the supporting context of this with SDSU is just not, it's not available at times, and it's not available to help us facilitate this with the applicants. And so, and again, as we pointed out, is that this hasn't really resulted in any changes to an application that's been presented to the county. And so the question is this a useful tool or a useful law that should exist within the CAFO ordinance?
Thank you.
The newer facilities, obviously, after watching the other night, have more technology. Has that improved the odor ordinance, or is there any research out there on that from South Dakota State or elsewhere?
Not in the estimation, no. What I would say is, so this is the first reading. The second reading is scheduled for March 23rd. At that time, you can accept, reject, or amend. If you choose to amend the recommendation of the Planning Commission, then of course you'd have to have an additional public hearing for that at that time.
And that second reading is scheduled, correct?
For March 23rd, yes.
Thank you.
Toby, I have one additional question, which may not be relevant to this particular piece, but other locales in other counties throughout the country have put on some prohibitions on the type of barns that are being used. And some are self-contained, which are supposedly to emit less odor, as a curtain barn, which is very old. Have we ever explored any of that to encourage producers to try and adopt a more, I think, modern facility than a curtain barn? The research I've done on that is that it's more economical, and I understand all that. But do we have any ability to influence individuals to adopt some of these more modern situations? And as Commissioner Gibbon has said, cut down on the odor that's emitted from one of these things?
Yes, I mean, the County Board of Commissioners could amend the standards of the ordinance to require that it be some sort of, whatever you term, new industry.
Thank you.
What I would tell you, though, just to leave you with something, is that we haven't had a Class C concentrated CAFO operation in 2 years. There's not been an application submitted to our office within 2 years.
In last 2 years?
Correct, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Toby.
Item 15, Commissioner Schmidt, you were going to tee that up?
Yes. For the public, we have submitted a NOFA grant to assist in the 85th Street interchange. That has been a combination of private and public funds, our commitment from Sioux Falls, Lincoln County, private landowners, et cetera, to put an interchange in 85th Street, which probably would add about almost $3 billion worth of economic growth. In order to facilitate that, we combined and submitted a NOVA grant. And what we're doing, the first time it was turned down, so according to our agreement, we are resubmitting that, and we need a letter of support from the Lincoln County Commission. So I am motioning that we send that off to the proper authorities indicating our support for the resubmitting of this grant.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
How much is this grant, Commissioner Schmidt?
I think the grant, this one is for about $30 million overall.
Thank you. Sean, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
yes,
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Thank you. Any requests for executive session today?
I just want to clarify one thing before you go, though, if you don't mind.
Okay,
I think our terminology might have been wrong. We're not setting up a fund for the 4-H. I'm going to set up a line item under the general fund, and then at the end of the year, that money is going to roll into an assigned fund balance for the 4-H building. But it's not going to be its own separate fund. I just want to make sure that we're clear on that, because the fund would be if we set it up for an agency fund, and that would be if we were sending it to the 4-H leaders, which we don't want to do. We want to set it up for the building.
I understood what you meant, and I think everybody else did as
Okay.
far as how that was gonna work.
I was just sitting there and I was thinking about it, and I was like, that terminology might be wrong, so,
Do you think we need to go back and change it?
no. We'll just have it clarified in the minutes, what it, we're,
Okay.
thanks.
Any requests for executive? Julia?
Move for executive session.
I'll second.
Under what
Oh,
purposes?
I'm gonna assume that that is under item 1 of executive session. It's SDCL 125-2 sub 1. And that's it? All right, I entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Sean, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Sean?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
I think he signed out.
thank you. Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. So we're out of executive session. Consider a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank
Second.
you. Thank you. Sean?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. And just Consolidated Boards of Equalization, April 13th to May 4th, for everybody's